to the first module on your journey to conscious aging. In this video, we'll be discussing the myths, lies, and truths about aging. It's my intention that you become conscious of what the beliefs behind your fears are. In order to do that, I recommend that you listen to this entire video once through. You can skip over the parts where it suggests that you reflect and write in your journal. I want you to get a feel for the whole program first, and then go back and do the exercises when you can give them the proper time. Be sure you do this to get the most out of this experience. I know it'll change your life and give you incredible peace of mind. So let's begin. How do you view old age? What is old for you? Are you old? Or is old something, anything beyond where you are at the present moment? We don't like to identify ourselves as old because the view that most of us hold of aging is not a good one. We automatically see aging as becoming feebler, less aware, or less mentally alert. We see a greater need for dependence on others, and we fear being unable to take care of ourselves. And yes, in many cases, we fear illness, loneliness, isolation, and eventual death. What are your personal fears about aging? During this video, begin to truly get in touch with what they are. We can only release the fears that we face. That's the intention of this first video. In your journal, you'll find questions that guide you in discovering your beliefs and exercises to help you create a more empowering model for conscious aging. Researchers are discovering that most of the beliefs that are commonly held about aging are simply myths, which have become self-fulfilling prophecies. Fortunately, there's a new view of aging, which recognizes the abilities and potential of the elderly individual and debunks the misconceptions of the aging process. So now, take a moment to consider whether you think the following statements are true or false. Increasing age brings about greater psychological distress, and thus older adults are more depressed than younger adults. As individuals reach old age, they become preoccupied with memories of their childhood and youth. True or false? Older adults are less satisfied with their lives than younger adults. True or false? Older adults are alienated from members of their families and communities, and because older adults generally don't reside with their children, they rarely see them. True or false? Increasing age brings about a decline in sexual desires and interest, and older adults are not physically capable of engaging in active sexual activity. True or false? Social contacts decrease with increasing age. True or false? Most older people suffer from poor physical health. True or false? I'm happy to report that all of these statements are false. Unfortunately, the characteristics most frequently ascribed to older persons tend to be stereotypes. It's high time we refute the myths. In this video and the ones that follow, we'll continue to discover such things as the single most important contributor to successful aging. So it's time now to take a look at what myths you have brought into your life and what your fears about aging may really be about. I'd like you to pause here and take a test. Don't worry, you won't be graded and no one will see the result. Answer these questions with a true or false and record your answers in your journal. And then go to ToniLaMotta.com/consciousaging/myth-quiz. The password there is conscious. Don't look at the answers, just write your answer, true or false, and we'll come back to this later. Welcome back. One of the common misunderstandings about the aging process is that it inevitably leads to senility. Memory loss, intellectual decline, and confusion are not normal parts of aging. Researchers have clearly demonstrated, while that there is some decline in memory and sometimes in intellectual function, the changes are inconsequential for those who remain physically and emotionally healthy. The truth is that the accumulated knowledge alone helps someone to make better decisions and judgments and solve problems more easily when one keeps active and healthy while aging. The key factors in maintaining or improving mental capacities in later life are social involvement and flexibility. That means you can retain mental capacity by staying actively involved in family and society, and by staying open to change and new experiences. Other research implies that emotional well-being may be as influential on the aging mind as mental activity. I've been visiting a woman who's 104, and she's a perfect example of someone who finds life satisfying. She tells me all the time and shows me how content she is with her life, which keeps her from the negative emotions like anger, depression, and anxiety. I've seen the opposite in people much younger who are continually fighting with old memories or with what is, and sometimes with longing for things to be just the way they used to be. Both studies and spiritual teaching tell us that the key to consciousness is the acceptance of what is. It appears that the key to mental and emotional well-being is also the same. One of the strongest beliefs about old age is that it causes dementia. Dementia is the result of disease, not of aging. Scientists who study the brain assure us that the mind's accumulation of knowledge remains intact, though it can be, at times, harder to tap into as we age. Neuroscientists have found that it is primarily the brain's hardware. By that they mean the connection and the relay switches that act as processing equipment. That's what's vulnerable to wearing out with age. But the brain's software, the actual information that fills up the mind over a lifetime, does not deteriorate and continues to grow more sophisticated with each passing year. While at times everyone experiences some memory lapse, Ellen Langer and Harvard colleague Rebecca Levy have shown that becoming forgetful in old age is not inevitable. At least part of the reason our memory gets worse is that we expect it to. And to test this data, the two psychologists conducted research on memory and attitude towards aging in two groups: Americans who are deaf and people from mainland China. And these groups are less likely than most Americans to have been exposed to negative cultural stereotypes of aging. Using standard psychological measurements of memory, the researchers tested both groups and compared them to a group of elderly mainstream Americans. And in addition, the researchers compared memory retention in the elderly with younger people in all three groups. Not only did the mainland Chinese and American deaf far outperform the mainstream Americans on 4 psychological memory tests, but the oldest in these two groups, especially the Chinese, performed almost as well as the youngest. The strength of their performance even surprised the researchers. They concluded that the results can be explained entirely by the fact that the Chinese have the most positive, active, and internal image of aging across the 3 cultures studied. What's particularly striking about the Langer-Levy study is that it meticulously tracks how our fears, often fed to us by our culture, become self-fulfilling prophecies. So, our fear of memory loss is what can create actual memory decline. You may want to pause the video now and journal about this. What have your beliefs been about memory loss? Have you believed it was inevitable, or maybe even hereditary? Let this study guide you to a new way of thinking and help you to release some of your fears. Another common misconception about old age is that personality inevitably changes, and that individuals become grouchy and harder to live with. Once again, research studies have proven that the personality remains extremely stable with aging. In other words, someone who's cheerful and optimistic remains so throughout life, while a person who's grouchy and pessimistic in early life keeps the same personality characteristics in later life. When changes do seem to occur, once again, it's a function of disease, not of age. In addition, the dread of aging may be taking its toll on many other body systems. Physical and mental decline is not inevitable. Belief that it is what accelerates any decline. Still another misconception about older people is that growing old inevitably results in untreatable health problems. There's an assumption that there will automatically be substantial deterioration of physical capabilities and that nothing can or should be done about them. How often have you heard even doctors say, "Oh, it's just your age"? Do you ever attribute physical symptoms such as back pain and hearing loss to natural consequences of getting old? Well, consider this. Scientists are increasingly realizing that both these symptoms are reflective of treatable diseases and are not just inevitable realities of the aging process. Of course, older persons must take the steps necessary to take care of themselves holistically or get the medical attention needed and not just succumb to the myths of aging. How individuals approach aging can make all the difference in how the years affect them. People slow down as they grow older because they expect to. That was said by Deepak Chopra in his book, Ageless Body, Timeless Mind. We think of older people as wrinkled and plump, with gnarled hands and feeble gait, and gradually, inexorably, we let ourselves become those people. Of all age groups, the elderly have the most to gain by being active. Many studies have shown that the elderly can retain vigor, muscle tone, and a strong immune system in the later years through an exercise regime. The director of the Toronto Rehabilitation Centre in Ontario once said, "The less you do, the easier you fatigue. The more you fatigue, the less you're able to do." In addition to exercise, of course, diet makes an enormous difference in how people age, and the right foods can help protect against ailments such as heart disease or cancer or osteoporosis, arthritis, and high blood pressure. That comes from the editor of Prevention magazine, who also said, "Getting enough of certain vitamins and nutrients can increase the body's resistance to infectious disease." Health habits have a strong influence on both life expectancy and quality of life during old age. And healthful living not only promotes longevity, but also increases the chance of having the physical ability to enjoy life to its fullest in later years. And it's never too late to change. Douglas MacArthur once said, "You are as young as your faith, as old as your doubt, as young as your self-confidence, as old as your fear, as young as your hope, as old as your despair." So it's time now to take another look at what you were looking at earlier on the true-false test to see if your fears have changed. Go once again to ToniLaMotta.com/conscious aging/myth-quiz. The password is conscious. And this time, take a look at the answers and compare them to your own. And then once again, record in your journal whatever you have found. To become free of fear finally, You first have to name the fear. And then I suggest talking about it with a trusted mentor or guide, even beyond your own journal. Next, imagine what your life set free from that fear would look like. And then begin to act on your fear if possible and diminish its power. And notice how your fear of fear is actually greater than the thing you feared, and that beyond it, your life and magnificence become more fully alive. So if you've discovered your fear, you need to learn techniques to release them. And from time to time, I'll be sending you various programs and as a supplement to this program. But for now, I'd like to share the 3 techniques that I most use in my own life and have found incredibly helpful. The first is affirmative prayer. The second is a process called fear to faith. And the third is a solution known as EFT, or the Emotional Freedom Technique. So let's start with affirmative prayer. Affirmative prayer is different from prayers of petition that you may have learned as a child. This type of prayer is a scientific process that speaks to the truth of who we are and gets amazing results when applied correctly. It's a 5-step process. We call the steps recognition, unification, realization, thanksgiving, and release. You know, it's impossible to give a thorough explanation of this type of prayer here in a short time. I'll send you more about that later on. But for now, think about the fear that has come up for you and allow for a moment to feel what the opposite of that feeling would feel like. For example, it might be peace or love or some form of resting in a knowing of security. And set that as your intention for the prayer. And then begin the first step, recognizing the quality of God that would best represent what it is you think you're now missing. So, for example, I might pray, God is love, and God's love is unconditional. God's love is the same for everyone at every age. God's love can't be diminished over time. It's ever present. And in God's love, there is perfect peace and a sense of everlasting security. You can continue in this same vein. Next, the unification step. When we understand that we're made in God's image, we begin to realize that we actually are an individualized expression of God itself. And so whatever we know is true about God is also true about us. So we continue our prayer. This day, this moment, I see and know that I am made in God's image. I am made of pure love and pure peace. Security is my birthright. Nothing can separate me from that love and unity. I know this now. Who I am is perfect peace. The third step is the realization. If this is true, then what does that say about my fears? So I continue in prayer right here and right now. I know and I accept the end of any fear to the contrary. I know that God's love is everlasting, so it doesn't stop as I age. I know that no matter what happens in my life, at the center of my being, there is a place of peace, and I can go there at any time and remember the truth of who I am. I do that now. I see myself feeling an incredible sense of union with God itself. I see myself surrounded and filled with perfect love. I allow peace to flood my being, and I let go of any myth or belief I may have held in the past. This moment, this day, I accept the truth about my life. It is free from fear. I am whole and perfect as I am, right here and right now. Then we move into the next step, which is Thanksgiving. We pray, I allow myself to feel and to experience profound gratitude for knowing this truth. I see the perfection in life just as it is and just as it is not. I am grateful. I rejoice in my life experience. I see it all as good and only good. And finally, the last stage is the release. We pray, so I easily release any fear or doubt that I had up until now. I accept the truth of who I really am. I surrender to this moment. I no longer allow my thoughts to be fearful. I entrust myself into the love that I know that I am. I let my word go into the perfect law of the universe, which says, it is done unto me as I believe. I do believe, and so it is. Amen. You don't need to use the words that I've used here. Just follow the idea. I like to begin every day with affirmative prayer. Sometimes it's for the release of a particular fear, and sometimes it's an opportunity to set the intention for my day or week. Again, the website, ToniLaMotta.com, will provide you with other samples of affirmative prayer for your use. And when you change your thinking, you'll totally change your life. It's the clearest way I know how to change your thinking. So give it a try. I'll put together this prayer that I've just done just on a separate video and send it to you in an email so that you will have it and just use this as a model for doing your own affirmative prayer. The next technique I want to teach you is something I learned from two awesome spiritual teachers, Marcia Sutton and Lloyd Strom, and they call it fear to faith. I've provided 2 audios and a worksheet and several other things for you to review on the website, ToniLaMotta.com/fear-to-faith. The first audio talks about the process you can use with the worksheet, and the second answers questions that may come up after you've tried the process for 7 days. I could cite example after example of people who've used this process and have seen amazing changes. It does take doing it, however. How badly do you wish to eliminate those fears? Do the work. It works. The third technique that I want to teach you is something that's called the Emotional Freedom Technique, or EFT. I find it extremely beneficial. It uses basically the meridian channels found in Chinese medicine. And it's been observed that by tapping on these points while focusing on a problem, a release takes place, clearing the physical or emotional pain that's being worked on. It's based on the principle that the cause of all negative emotion is a disruption in the body's energy system. It seems that while experiencing or focusing on a specific problem and tapping on the meridians that carry the energy, trapped emotions are cleared and normal functions resume. I provided a video on the website which shows you exactly where and how to do the tapping. It's at ToniLaMotta.com/EFT-tapping-points. You'll also find other helpful resources on that page as well that will help you successfully use this powerful technique. And then from time to time, I'll be adding to these resource pages, so be sure to bookmark them. And I'll also email the links to you and send periodic reminders to use all 3 techniques as well as others that I'll recommend from time to time. And now, before you go on to the second module on doing a life review, please be sure to use your journal. Reflecting on the questions there will help you to unravel and reveal any and all fears you may still have about aging, and any of the myths that you might have bought into. I want you to experience genuine freedom and peace of mind once and for all.